Hey everybody, welcome back to the Magnetic Podcast. I'm your host, Jared Minsloff, and today I'm super excited to have my good friend and fellow founder, Natalie Barbu. Natalie, thank you so much for hopping on today.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on the podcast.
I know there's a lot of people listening that have always wanted to get behind the head of an influencer. And I also know there's a lot of people that love listening to founders. So today we've doubled up and we've brought in someone who is not just an influencer, but she also has her own startup. So Natalie, why don't you fill everybody in on who you are and how you got here?
Yeah, so I actually started as a content creator influencer back in 2011. So before that, the word influencer was even a thing. I was on YouTube back then and I stuck with it throughout high school, college. I went to school, got a job after college, was able to quit that job to do social media full time and be a full time creator. And that's when I started noticing all of the kind of problems and pain points that I faced as a creator, where I was using a bunch of different apps, a bunch of different tools. I was super disorganized. I felt like there wasn't anything specifically made for people like myself that were, doing social media as a career or at least as a business. And so I wanted to build something that kind of consolidated all of these different tools that I was using and helped me save time and automate my workflow. And so that's how Rella came to be, where Rella is like a project management tool for creators and their teams to manage their business and manage their content. And so I started that about 2 years ago. And it's been really fun balancing being a creator while also being a founder. It's definitely changed my routine a lot. And it's a different experience trying to balance both, but it's been a lot of fun because I get to actually work and help creators every single day while also still doing it myself too.
That's really cool. I think the fact that you're building something for people just like you, I think that's got to be super helpful since you are the pain, the pain points, you are the prospect. So that's really awesome. I want to dig into, you mentioned you were an influencer before influencers, which was a little bit of a humble brag. So tell us a little bit about, like, in my mind, being an influencer now is pretty cool. When I think back in the day, though, influencers, I just feel like it was looked at as being silly, or you probably took a lot of heat for that. So tell me a little bit about like what made you want to get into that, and how did you get into it so early?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was not cool back then. Like now it's, everyone loves to show like how many followers they have or like post content, which I love it's so much more acceptable now. But when I was doing it when I was 15 in high school, it was definitely not cool. I was trying to keep it a secret for a while. But the way I got started in it is because I was watching other girls on YouTube like do their makeup in their rooms and film room tours and like hauls, and I just thought it looked fun. And I was always someone that was a pretty creative person. I always wanted to be on camera. Like I tried to do acting when I was younger. I would always do skits in front of my family, and I always just like really loved doing that type of stuff. And so when I saw these girls that were my age posting on YouTube, I thought I could do that too, and it looked like a lot of fun. And so I just filmed my first video on my laptop in my room and like loved it and loved the community that I could see was building. Like even though it was 2011, I remember hitting like 100 subscribers and doing like a giveaway and saying it was the best day of my life, and I was so excited. But I definitely tried to keep it a secret when I was in high school. I did not want my peers to find out. I didn't want people to watch them that I knew in real life. And then they eventually did, and they would make fun of me and like play them at parties. And it was not a fun time for me. But I just really loved it. And so I'm glad that I kept doing it and I stuck with it. And it definitely took a toll. I took a little bit of a break. I think like my senior year of high school, I wasn't as active because I didn't really want to get made fun of. But I still did it once I entered college, and I'm so glad I did because it got me to where I am today, and I can't imagine my life without having done it and having stuck with it.
I love that. I think for me, I resonate a little bit with that just because I was a super nerd. I moved all the time. I think we've kind of talked about this, but I moved almost every year and I developed a little bit of a quirkiness because I never had a ton of friends. And I was very into YouTube. As I've told you, I had a YouTube channel. And nobody see the difference between me and you though is nobody knows about. There's like 4 people that know about my YouTube channel. I used to
Well, now
record
a
like
lot more.
yeah. Well, no, they'll never find it. So it was funny though because I went through that same thing where technology, YouTube, Reddit, like that was such a big part of my life. That was like my identity, I feel like, growing up. And then when I got to public school and high school, I remember some people were like, hey man, like just be, just play sports, just be normal. Like do not bring up the YouTube. Like that's not cool. So I remember I kind of pushed that to the side for like 8 years. And then out of college, playing sports was cool in college, but out of college, people didn't really care if you played like lacrosse. And so I was able to kind of find some of that other, like the YouTube and social media and that sort of thing. So it's been fun. That's the nice thing about the real world is once you get out of, college and school, like you can be whoever you want and there's places for you, no matter what your interests are, there's going to be people that love and respect and like motivate you to do those things.
Yeah. Have you made any recent videos since getting out of school?
We have this stuff, magnetic. I tried to, initially before I met Jake, who, for context runs our podcast. I tried to do some like social media stuff where I would make like short form videos about like the misconceptions of blockchain. And, I don't know. It just didn't feel super natural. I love magnetic because it's actually something I'm super interested in. I get to talk to really smart people like yourself. I get to explore like their stories and what makes brands them, the secret sauce behind these passionate brand communities. And so like, I think this has been amazing, this podcast, regardless of who it reaches. I'm able to really just like learn so much about our customers and about the industry and about people. And that's already helpful enough. So it's been great, not just from like content perspective, but more so just from a personal growth and branding perspective, which has been really fun. So
Yeah, it opens a lot of doors.
So let me ask you this. You've got a personal brand. You started out as an influencer. Now you have Rella, which is this platform dedicated to helping influencers. What is harder? Is being a founder more difficult than being an influencer, or is it the other way around?
Definitely being a founder, I would say, is more difficult. But I think that it's really hard to make it to a point to do social media full time or as a business. Like, I think it's hard to get to a point where you can actually make a full time living off of it. That takes years of work where you're not getting paid at all, which is similar to being a founder. I mean, for us, me and my co-founders didn't get paid in the beginning. We did a lot of it just to build it because we knew it would pay off one day. So it's similar in that sense where it's hard to get to a point where you kind of made it. But I think the day-to-day stresses of a founder are a lot more challenging because I don't just have myself to worry about. I have a team of people. I have employees. We have customers. Like if I don't post a video and I decide, I'm done with social media and I'm don't want to do this anymore, it really only affects myself. Like I don't have a team around me. But being a founder, you have so many people leaning on you. You have customers that are upset or, something wrong, something happens. So I think it's a lot harder and a lot more stressful to be a founder.
I'm not an influencer, so I will agree with you there.
Yeah.
I don't know what being an influencer is like, but I can tell you being a founder is quite awful sometimes. So, but I'm also a glutton for punishment. So,
yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like being a influencer has its downsides. Like there's a lot of hate that you get. There's a lot of, mean comments, and it's definitely requires a lot of work that you don't see necessarily on camera. But I think just the aspect of like having more people rely on you is a lot more stressful than just doing it individually.
Yeah. So let's jump into a lot of our listeners are e-commerce retail brands, and they would love to get inside of the mind of an influencer. I want to start with just this idea of influencer because I think people get even starting with definitions wrong. To you, what is an influencer? Like, how do you define that term and what does it mean to you?
I mean, technically, it's anyone that has an influence, but that could be anyone, even if you're not on social media. You influence your friends, you influence your family. So I think in today's world, it's people that have a influence on social media and they have a following that they might not know in real life, but that they can influence them. And it's on the platform is a social media platform rather than just, you know, your day to day life, I would say. So it's not a certain amount of followers or anything like that. I think it's you just have built a trusted community online.
What do you think that brands get wrong about influencers? Like what's one of the biggest misconceptions?
Yeah, I think a lot of brands, there's like two sides to it where some brands are really reluctant to work with influencers. They don't think it works at all. They think it's a waste of money. Whereas the other side, it's like they want to work with a ton of influencers, but they're not choosing their either influencers correctly, like it doesn't fit their brand, so then they're not seeing the ROI with it, or they're just working, you know, they're trying to like control exactly what that creator is going to post. Like they don't really give them creative freedom, but they want to work with a ton of creators on things. So I think that both of those um, can be like both brands doing either of those things are probably not going to see the rewards of working with influencers. So I think that with influencers, it's you're working with people at the end of the day. It's not a Facebook ad. It's not a paid like a paid ad campaign or traditional media. So you have to make sure that the people that you're working with actually align with your brand and that they resonate with your brand, or else, yeah, you're probably not going to see a great return. And with that, then you need to make sure that you don't have to have control of the entire campaign. You have to like trust that the person that you're choosing to work with is going to be able to execute your vision and your, you know, objective for what you're trying to achieve with that campaign, but you have to kind of give them creative freedom. So there's kind of like two sides to it, but I think it all comes down to just not choosing the right people to work with, or not choosing the right creators to work with when you're doing an influencer marketing campaign.
Do you have a specific story that comes to mind of maybe a time where you were, you know, something went wrong or things were misunderstood?
I mean, I think a lot of times when a brand chooses to work with me, I hope that they've seen my content before and they know the type of content I post. There are some brands where they'll say, like, we want you to say this exact hook and post this exact, you know, film these exact clips, and this is what we want it to look like. And it's just like so not what I would normally post that I'm like, okay, I mean, if you want me to do this, like, I usually will turn down brands that are just like so far from what I would normally post. But if I really like the brand and I want to work with them and they're, you know, have these strict requirements, I just kind of tell them, I'm like, it's not going to perform well. Like I can post this, but it probably won't get a lot of views. It's not going to get a lot of engagement. Like people will scroll right past it because they're not used to seeing that on my page. So they're not even going to like recognize it, I feel like. So I'll tell them I don't think it's going to perform well if I do this. And then I mean, it's up to them if they say like, okay, sorry, like we really want to do this, or the brand really wants this to get done. But I'll push back, or I'll just not work with them. If it's something so far from what I would normally post, I'll just turn it down. And I think the more brands are realizing that authentic content performs much better than scripted content. I think with TikTok, it's become a lot better because they see how authentic content performs really well on TikTok versus maybe a few years ago was like a very posed Instagram post that's just like not natural looking at all. So I think brands have gotten better, but yeah, a lot of times if they're super strict with exactly what I need to post, I'll either say no or just tell them like this isn't going to do well.
I'm thinking of a few ads I've seen that I thought were really good in terms of this like influencer marketing is when the influencer goes the extra mile to like normally when I watch content, there's this sense that there's intro to the video and then there's like now we're sponsored and it's like here's the sponsorship and then here's the rest of the video. I think where what I love is when creators go the extra mile and instead of having this block where it's like, hey, this is sponsored, it's like worked in a really natural way. I know Manscaped, I don't know if they push this, but all of their creators I feel like do a really great job of relating Manscaped's products to their life, or like during the middle of the video, they'll be like, yeah, I need to work on my health. Like I need to work on my grooming, honestly. And then he's like, good thing I have Manscaped, you know, like stuff like that. I feel like is a lot more fun because if the creator can work it into their natural content and it feels natural, that means they're probably a pretty good fit for the product anyway. Whereas if they have to like segment it outside of their content, that means that they probably leave, it's outside of their life at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I also think that a lot of brands should start leaning into people that already talk about them and already promote them on social media, whether they have a small amount of followers or they're big creators, because all influencers, like all of us, talk about the products that we're loving or the brands that we're loving, even if we're not paid. Like if I'm filming a video and I'm using something, I'll say, oh, this is where this is from. Or if I really like something, I'll, rave about it online. And I think brands should start looking at people that do that and reach out to them for sponsorship opportunities or to work with them in some capacity. Because if whenever I work with a brand that I've either talked about a lot or I get really excited about, you can just see it in my content, and you can see it in people's content if they've actually talked about it before. Like I have a friend who shared a lot of her dating experiences, and then she had a sponsor, or she was sponsored by Hinge, and it was like such a good integration because it's something she's talked about a ton and it's something she's showed in her life a ton. And so the engagement was super high. All of the comments were like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like even your followers are even excited when they see that you're working with a brand that you've talked about before. And so they'll, hype it up and promote it, which then increases its reach. And so I think brands should start looking more at their like loyal fans. And even if they don't have a lot of followers, it's better. Like if I have 100,000 followers, but only 100 people care, like watch this one really branded advertisement that I'm posting, or like I have 10,000 followers, but 1,000 people are engaging with it because it's very organic. That's so much better. And it's also cheaper for the brand to work with the person that has a smaller, but, more engaged community.
So I want to dig into that a little bit more. So I think one question that people will always have when they listen to this is going to be, I totally agree with you. I want to find the right influencers, but I don't necessarily know how. And I know you mentioned find customers, where that intersects. So are there any other places like that you'd recommend brands go to find influencers that match the tone and the product? And then the second piece of that is, how do you identify those folks? Because sometimes it's not easy to do that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a ton of marketplaces out there for matching creators and brands, but I think that's harder to find people that already support you. I know searching, if you're a brand, I think doing something like Urban Outfitters, for example, has a hashtag that if you wear Urban Outfitters, post UO on you on Instagram, and then maybe you'll get reposted. So whenever people are posting just a normal selfie, if they're wearing Urban Outfitters, they'll tag it and put that hashtag. So I think if brands can come up with initiatives like that, that would be really useful, just because then you have a bunch of user-generated content in one hashtag. But also just honestly, like looking organically on social media, like through hashtags, through searches. Like if you're looking for someone specifically in Miami, you can type Miami influencer on TikTok and a bunch of people will come up because they'll have posted content about that before. I think searching organically on social media can be time consuming, but you might find better people because it's like specifically people that are talking about exactly what you want to talk about, or they're tagging you, or they're mentioning your products. Like I have a friend who was working with this deodorant company and she was finding influencers for them. And instead of using these marketplaces, she would just look on TikTok, like hashtag Target haul or Target run, because the deodorant that she was working with was being sold at Target. And, that's how she found a ton of creators, because they were already talking about what they bought at Target. So if they wanted to work with, this deodorant line, it would already be natural and organic to what they were posting. So I honestly think finding just like keywords and people that are posting about specific topics, just searching through social media, is better than just trying to find a bunch of influencers through a marketplace that maybe they've never heard of your brand or they don't post the content you want to post.
I think there's some really good stuff in there. I feel like identification of these people like through the hashtags, I think that that's really good. I don't know a ton of brands that are doing that, so I'm actually going to steal that one for some of our brands. What do you think grinds your like what grinds your gears about brands? Like what are they really doing wrong?
I think, again, kind of going back to what I said earlier, where they don't let you have creative freedom. Like that really bothers me because I'll know if something doesn't perform well or if it's not going to perform well. And when they're really forcing it on you, because at that point I'm like, you should just hire a production company and make the exact commercial you want to create if you want it to look a specific way. Like they'll send you inspiration and they'll send you like, we want it to look like this, and then film these shots, and then you'll send them your content that's organic to you and authentic to you, and they're like, oh, that's not what we were looking for, and they'll make you like redo the whole thing, which I understand. Like I'm getting paid as a creator, so I know it needs to be something that they obviously approve of and what they want, but this isn't like, I'm not making a commercial. I'm still presenting it to my audience. So it does still have to relate to my audience if it's going to do well. So I think when they try to just have too much creative control, I'm like, why just don't hire me then if you don't like the content that I post. So that's always my biggest one. And when they just give like, this is more nitpicky, but if they're like giving you feedback and then you redo it and you send it back in, then they give you like more feedback that could have been said the first time, just like too much back and forth. I'm like, let's streamline this. Let's make this easier for both of us. So yeah, I think just not allowing the creator to be authentic to themselves.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I think as a marketer, you probably want to you have a certain vision for how you envision your brand looking, feeling, and you want your influencers to create content that matches that. And I think that can be challenging. I'm reminded of this is kind of an off-topic thing, but like The Bachelor, like reality TV. I know for a fact that they prompt most of those conversations. I know people that have been on the show and like have talked to them about it, and it's like they'll still have a conversation on the show, and then the producer will come in and say, hey, like that was good, but actually can you act a little bit more like can you ask him a little bit more about his dead brother, and like I know that stuff happens on TV because they want to create this certain image of like what The Bachelor is. They want to evoke a certain feeling, and I think that a lot of the times marketers, they take that view into influencers, and maybe it gets more like clicks or maybe it gets more emotion. But at the end of the day, nobody's buying really, at least I shouldn't say that. There are people that buy that The Bachelor is real. But I think most people understand that it's entertainment. Most people I talk to understand that like The Bachelor is there to entertain us, but they're not buying into this idea that you can get married in a week and fall in love and have a successful marriage necessarily. And I'm speaking with a broad brush because I know there's some people listening that are like, no, you're wrong. But
Yeah,
I
what?
feel like
I don't know what you're talking about.
yeah, maybe I'm missing the mark on this one. We can have Jake remove it, but I feel like it's the same thing. Like it's just when you're talking about getting clicks, like that's different than getting people to buy in. And I feel like when it comes to a brand, if you want people to buy into your product, well, then you need it to be authentic. So I feel like there's that dichotomy there that maybe marketers are missing of, hey, maybe you do get more like good looks on it and it feels better. But the reality is people aren't going to buy into it if they don't think it's real.
Yeah, and also, I mean, a lot of brands now I think are realizing that, and they're actually hiring creators for just user generated content rather than to live on their page, which at that point I'm fine with creating exactly what you want me to create. I don't need to have creative control because it's not going to live on my own page. But when the brand posts it on their page or they put paid marketing behind it, it still feels like a real person. Like obviously, yes, I'm a real person, but it doesn't feel like a paid ad. It feels like an organic mention, or it feels like it could be like your friend that's shooting this content and talking about this brand, and then the brand pays you so that it can just like live on their own page versus getting a production company to film this like big commercial that they're going to put paid ads behind that people are going to scroll past now. Because I think nowadays when you're on TikTok and Instagram, if you see something that's super produced, you're just like scrolling right past it. Like it's like, oh, that's another ad, scroll. Like you're not even paying attention to what it is because you don't want to like fall for it. But if you're scrolling on TikTok and it's someone that's, holding their phone right here and it feels like they're FaceTiming you, you're going to watch it and then you'll find out it's an ad afterwards and you're like, oh, okay, but at least like it got your attention. So a lot of brands are actually paying creators now to not even post on their own page. They're just paying them to create content that, feels and looks like a regular person posting for the brand, which I think is really smart. I think more brands should start doing that.
Yeah, I think creators also have the advantage of, I just feel like brands aren't as up to speed on like people as creators
Mm-hmm.
are, because creators are just engaging with people every day at a scale that's like not many other people can ever have. And so I think there's that element with creators of truly understanding the pulse of where the people are at. And like I have so many ideas now, but I definitely feel like brands need to be working more with that, because creators are ultimately a gateway into their customers. And so the more you can connect with your creators, the better you can understand your customers and the better you can connect and really relate to your audience.
Yeah, and things just move super quickly now. Like there's trends that come and go within a week or 2 weeks, and you can't have, you go to your marketing person and then they go to the president and all of these different
Mm.
approvals for something to go out. Like it needs to be quick. And I think creators are a lot quicker than brands are with executing. So I think it's a good move to hire them, because then they keep up with the trends, they know what's popular, and they can churn it out quickly.
Do you have any crazy things that you've been asked to do by a brand? Like any weird stories? Like what's the wildest thing you've been asked to do from a brand perspective? If you feel comfortable
Uh
sharing.
I'm sure I have. I need a second to think because I don't remember.
We can come back to it
Um,
as well, but you can also take time to think.
I don't know if I've had anything super crazy. I've been doing this for a while, so I'm sure there's something that I'm like, this is weird, but
You could have also mentally blocked it out too. Been like, that never
maybe. I
happened.
have horrible memory. Like whenever I'm like put on the spot and like about like tell me about a specific instance, I'm like all memories are gone. I don't know
Mm,
anymore. Um, so I'll get back to you on that. I don't
okay.
remember.
That's totally fine. I'm the same way. Um, do you so this part is a little bit more selfish because I have a sister who I'm trying to convince to be, an influencer, at least to like give it a shot. Can you talk a little about like what is the career opportunity like for an influencer today? How lucrative is that, and how much, I mean, maybe you don't have to share numbers, but like how much money can you make doing it?
Yeah. I mean, today you can make so much money and so much more money than even a few years ago. I think the creator economy, and people say that it's saturated. Like, there's so many creators now, it's so saturated, it's going to burst. But I think also there's so many people consuming content that has just risen in the past 5-10 years, that and so many more brands are working with influencers now, so the budgets are a lot higher. So even if you have a few followers, you can still actually make a pretty decent amount of money. I remember when I was graduating college, so I couldn't quit my job yet to graduate. Like when I graduated college, I wasn't able to actually quit because I wasn't making enough to do it full time. But within 9 months of graduating and starting my job, and after 9 months later, I was able to quit my job because I was making like double my salary. That I was a consultant and I was making double my salary on social media. So I, in just 9 months, like it was like quadrupled my what I was making. So I think you can make a lot of money in a really short amount of time. And then also, you don't need to have that many followers. Like there's people that have 10,000 followers that are doing it full time, and you could make $100,000 a year, with 10,000 followers. Like I think it depends on your audience. It doesn't depend on the following that you have. Like obviously, you need to have some followers, but you don't need to have that like large amount of people if you have a really engaged audience. Um, and it's a lot easier now to have an engaged audience because the algorithms are just feeding people exactly what they want to see. So if you're making fitness content, for example, your content will be pushed out to people that are wanting to see fitness content. And so they're going to be a lot more engaged with you than if it was just pushed out to a broad group of people. So I actually think it's easier now, even though there's way more people. And I also think now with TikTok, for example, people are consuming probably hundreds, if not thousands, of pieces of content a day. If you're scrolling on TikTok for 2 hours and an average TikTok video is like 20 seconds, like that's a lot of people that you're consuming in a 2 hour span. So I do think it's a lot easier today to grow than it was when I started, even though it was, not that many people were on it, not that many people were watching either. And then I know there's a friend of mine who she just posted all about like salaries on social media, and she was asking people what they make and sharing it anonymously. And then she shared what she made, and she has 250K across all platforms besides on TikTok she has 500,000, which is a lot. Like that's hard to get. That's a lot of followers. But she's making $950,000 a year. Like that's
Wow.
crazy. And she shared that on social media. So like you can make a lot of money on it, and you don't need to have millions or hundreds of thousands of followers. I know like Forbes just released their top creators and put the salary or put their estimated earnings on the list. And I was looking at those numbers and I'm like, honestly, I think these are low. Like I think that like these people are making a lot more than that. Like I think it said Alex Earl was making like 5 million a year. I guarantee she's making more than that. Like there's people are making a lot of money now on social media, and budgets have gone up a ton. So definitely tell your sister to start because it's the opportunities are endless. Like I view social media as a platform rather than the end goal. Like
Mm-hmm.
I always wanted to do something else. Like I always knew I was going to start a business one day. I knew I was going to do something other than just, be a content creator. And so I didn't know what it was going to be, but I just knew that social media was going to be that platform that would get me there. Like the amount of doors that have opened, the amount of opportunities I've had, even, I mean, with Rella, like obviously, yes, it's because I'm a creator. I have had those pain points, but I think it was a lot easier for me to get in front of investors, to get in front of creators, to get in front of managers, because I have a following and I'm a creator myself. So, I mean, I think opportunities are endless. And it's like the best decision I ever made.
That's awesome. I almost feel like with being a creator, right? You're basically investing in your personal brand, and I think the really nice thing, because I've always like I never really was super into being public about my company or about the things I was doing, just because I think there was that sense of like build in silence, build in the quiet. And I've learned over the years of running Nifty Bridge that the best brands are the ones that lead, that are founder led, that are sharing their story. They're not afraid to be at the front, and they're not afraid to fail. They're not afraid to share their failures. And as I've opened myself up to social media, in a sense, I've opened myself up just personally, and just being more transparent and being more open to being vulnerable, in the sense that like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing all the time, but I'm out here and I'm doing my best, and I want to share it because maybe there's other people that are also afraid to share it. So I think that creators are really amazing, because I think it takes a lot of vulnerability to put yourself out there, like you have for you, your whole life. But the good thing about what you're doing, and the good thing about building a personal brand, is it transcends like launching a product, because a product can fail, and then you're back to square one. But with a personal brand, I mean, unless obviously you do something horrible, which these days that could actually skyrocket your personal brand. But your personal brand's always there. It's something that you can rely, you can fall back on. You can launch 10 products, and as you fail launching a product, your brand could continue to grow. And so I think that's what's really nice, is brands can stay around forever, especially your personal brand. I think it's worth investing in.
Yeah, and I always would get asked the question, like especially when I quit my job 4 years ago, people would ask me, "Well, what are you going to do when this all goes away, or what are you going to do when social media ends?" Which I think it's a rude question to ask personally, but also what bothers me about that question is that anyone can get fired from their job, your business can fail. Like, what are you going to do then when you get laid off? Like, like what? It's, to me, my personal brand, it's never going to be a 100 to 0. Like it's never going to be, oh, I'm done all of a sudden from one day to the next. If it does start to, taper off, I'll be able to feel that ahead of time. And I'll be able to, in that time, maybe try to like reinvent myself, or try to pivot, or do something, make a new series, or post different types of content. And I mean, I've been doing it for 12 years, and it's been a revolving door. Like people have followed me 12 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even last year. Like they might not be following me anymore, but along the way I'll get new people. And so I think it actually has a longer life than people think. And we're the first generation that's actually doing this as a career. So, I mean, I don't know where it'll be in 10, 20 years from now, but if you would have told me I would still be doing it 12 years later when I was 15, like I would have never thought that. So I just think it's so good to have a presence online if you're curious about it or if you want to do that, I think it can help, like I said, be a platform for anything else that you decide to start, whether it's a business or courses or whatever else you decide to do. And yeah, I think it's honestly a good long term solution, even though some people might disagree.
You mentioned you don't know what it's like going to be like in 10 to 20 years. Can you give us maybe your Natalie's vision into maybe even just like 3 to 5 years of like what the creator economy will look like?
Yeah, I think it's going to continue. Like, I think even in 10, 20 years, we're still going to have influencers and creators. I think the lines between celebrity and influencer are going to be a lot more blurred. We're seeing that even today. Like, I think Alex Earl is an example where, yes, she's an influencer, but she's crossed over to being a celebrity, I think, today. And I don't think anyone like bats an eye at that. So I do think that traditional media and creators are going to start merging. You see that even with a lot of traditional celebrities are starting YouTube channels and they're posting on, short form content as well. So I think there's not going to be that separation anymore. And I think a lot of things are going to start going on social media or like short form content or streaming content rather than platforms like news networks or, network television to pick up someone and like do a show around them or do a talk show or something like that. Like, I think those are kind of going to taper out. And I think we're mainly going to have just people being their own platform and posting their own content on the internet and making a name for themselves without the help of like a network or traditional media. And I think authentic content is here to stay. Like, I think people like seeing sorry, my computer like went black for a second. But yeah, I think it's okay. Yeah, it's still recording. Okay, sorry.
No, you're good.
But yeah, I think that people are going to continue to show like behind the scenes of, careers and, their life and post it on the internet. And instead of reality TV, we'll be getting like just people posting their vlogs online. And I also think that a lot of small business owners and founders are going to have to become creators. I think we're seeing that more now. Like, even, I mean, you said that you're posting a lot more content now and, behind the scenes of building Nifty Bridge. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that because people want to know who they're supporting. They want to know who started this business. They want to feel connected to the business. And it's hard to feel connected when you don't know who's behind it. I think we see that even with like celebrity brands today. Like, they're not the CEO. They're not the ones that built it from the ground up, but they're the face of it. And so people feel connected to the brand in that way. And so I think that a lot of founders and business owners are going to have to start becoming creators too.
What do you think it is about like seeing how the cookie's made that is so popular today or so valued by consumers? And when I say that, I mean exactly what you're talking about, where they want to see what goes on behind the scenes, who is behind the scenes, what's the face of the brand? Like, why do you think that resonates with today's audience more than maybe before?
I think just curiosity for one. Like, I think 20 years ago, if you, asked people, hey, do you want to know what goes on behind the scenes of Target? People would have said yes. They just didn't have the opportunity to see that. So I think now people are given the opportunity to see what goes on behind the scenes of their favorite companies or the companies that are being built today. And so they're actually, leaning into it and they want to see more of it. And so eventually it's going to become an expectation, I think. So I think it's more just curiosity. Like, I'm super curious about what goes on at even companies that I don't necessarily care about. I want to know, how do they run it and what's their team look like and who are their employees. And I mean, there's even TikTok accounts now. Like, I think Duolingo is a good example of that, where Duolingo's TikTok has nothing to do with their app. It has everything to do with the owl, the little mascot that they have running around the office, showing their marketing team, showing other people at their office. There's one of this person I know that he started a dating app called Locks Club. All of their TikToks are about the CEO and about their office culture. And it has nothing to do with, oh, hey, we're a dating app. Like, people are just connected now to the team and then they want to support them. So I think that it's what stemmed from curiosity is eventually going to become like an expectation to know like who is behind the scenes and who they're supporting.
How much of that too is people wanting to take more of a role in the brands that they love? I mean, Do you feel like if you think about the top brands that you care about, like, do you ever wish that you had more of a role in the direction of the brand, the voice of the brand, the products that they have?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's another huge factor. They feel like their voices are heard. They feel, excited when a brand responds to one of their comments, or they feel excited if there's like a Zoom call and you can give them feedback and, actually shape the future roadmap of a company. Like I think people feel really connected in that sense. That's what we did with Rella actually. So before we launched Rella, I was talking about it on my YouTube channel for months before we ever even launched. And I shared the name, I shared what we were building, I shared our Zoom meetings. I would record them and post them about this is the behind the scenes of a meeting with the founding team, whatever. And it did really well. And then people were, eager to sign up to be beta testers. They were eager to join these Zoom calls where they could give us feedback on the product. And I feel like a lot of companies struggle to get that. Like they might have to pay people and Amazon gift cards to get people to sign up for a feedback call, where we had a wait list of people. Like we had to turn people down because we were building in public and we were showing, here's what we're building. Do you guys have any I don't know, what do you guys think? And people were excited to give their opinion because they saw the journey and they saw the process of it. And so then when we launched, we had so many people post about us and tag us and send it to their friends. And it was such a successful launch because of that. And so I think a lot of people, kind of like you mentioned, you wanted to build in private and you didn't want to tell anyone what you were doing. And I think people are scared that someone's going to copy them or whatever. But I think it's so beneficial to build in public and to share the behind the scenes and to get people involved, because brands are nothing without their customers. So if you can get them involved in as many ways as possible, they're just going to reward you by continuing to come back and be repeat customers. Like if we have a bug or something, our loyal customers are going to email us and say, hey, just so you know, just found this, this isn't working, versus someone that maybe just found us on the app store is going to say, I'm going to cancel this app. This sucks. They had a bug, so it's
Yeah.
just builds more loyalty also.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about because I saw on social media that you guys had launched an ambassador program or a creator club. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think what I would love to do is share some real tactical ways that people can get influencers more involved. And I think this is an amazing idea. So can you share what you did with that creators club?
Yeah. So we're starting it. So it hasn't technically launched yet,
Okay.
but we are starting an ambassador program. Yeah, you can sign up. I'll go to our website or apply. But our app is pretty much just the back end side of things for creators. It's not front facing at all. So our challenge is, how do we get it in front of people? We're not a link in bio platform. We're not something that people, see all the time. This water bottle, for example, has Stanley on it. It's nothing that people are going to see. It's all internal and on the back end side of things. So how do we spread the word about it organically, or how do we have other people spread the word about it? So we wanted to start an ambassador program where people can get access to exclusive events. They'll have, they'll be really involved with our roadmap and give us direct feedback. They'll be able to get merch and, things that they can wear. They'll have a community of creators that they can, a close community of creators that they can talk to, direct line of access to us as a team. In exchange for that, they would have to just organically post about us once a month, whether that's stories, TikTok, Instagram, whatever it is. Just spread the word about us, and then the people that they bring, they'll get commission if they bring people to Rella. So that's the plan for it. We haven't launched it, but that's coming soon. And we decided to do that because we're getting a lot of people that were posting about us, but I wanted to give an additional incentive for it and actually provide value to people that use us all the time and want to post about us. And one brand that I really look up to and admire is Notion. I think they do such a good job at their ambassador programs and their organic community that they have. And they'll host Notion events, sponsored events, where people in Miami, let's say, in a local city, will get together and they'll, hang out with other people that love Notion, and they'll sponsor it. So they'll buy their coffee and they'll, host them at a restaurant or whatever. And that way they're like a bunch of Notion lovers there, and then they can like post about it on social media and spread the word and invite their friends. And it's built such a loyal community. So now there's thousands of people posting every single day about Notion online. And so as someone who maybe I didn't know what that was before, now I see all of these people sharing their templates and sharing what they're building on Notion. And that looks cool. So I want to start doing it, even though Notion started as like a very internal tool.
Mhm.
So I really like what they're doing. I kind of want to emulate that with what we have at Rella, but we are really lucky because our audience, they're influencers, and so their word goes to a lot of people. So trying to start an ambassadorship program for that. But we did have like a beta group and stuff prior to launching, and that did really well, like with the launch and with feedback groups and things like that.
Cool. Well, I definitely want to hear more about that. We have I would love to help, but very cool that that's launching. We're coming up on time, so I like to kind of leave the last few minutes for people listening. You know, what advice do you have for marketers and founders out there that want to get into the world of influencers, that want to find unique ways to use influencers? They know the power of it, but they're just not sure where to start. Like, can you share some feedback or final thoughts on what you would do if you were in their shoes?
Yeah. I think number one, just remember that you're working with a bunch of people. I think people forget that a lot. And so get creative with it. Like you don't have to just follow a typical, like, we pay you, you post on social media, and that's it. Like, there's so many ways to work with creators, whether it's user generated content, whether it is just a sponsorship, whether it's a long-term partnership, whether it's an activation or event, or there's just so many ways to work with creators besides the generic sponsored hashtag ad post. And so I think once you start finding people that really resonate with your brand, people that are obsessed with your brand, that have talked about it before, talk to them and see what ideas they have. You know, like if some of my favorite brands came up to me and were like, hey, we want to work with you, what do you think we should do? I would have so many ideas because I'm like so excited to work with this brand that I love. And I know that my audience likes them, and I know what my audience wants to see from them and from me. And let's get creative on how we can work together. So I think coming to the creator with an open mind, and picking people that actually genuinely love your brand before you ever reached out to them, or at least have talked about something similar to your brand, like maybe the same vertical. I think that's the way to start a successful campaign, rather than just like picking someone because they have a lot of followers and you think it'd be cool to have this one specific influencer that like say your name in a video. Being able to like allow them to get more creative and picking people that already support you, I think is a lot better.
Love that. Where can people find you if they want to hop into your DMs? Where do they go?
Yeah, you can find me at Natalie Barbu across all platforms. You can get or find Rella at Rella Social, or you can go to getrella.com. And then I also have a podcast called The Real Podcast. So you can also listen there.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Natalie. This was super fun. I know I learned a bunch, and I know people listening are going to really enjoy it. So thank you for hopping on, and we hope you have a great rest of your week.
Yeah, thanks for having me.